Hey everyone, Eenies20, and welcome to another Four-Lands report. That's right, this one, I think it's been about a month since I finished reading The First King of Shannara. I didn't realize until later, though, that I should not have read this one or this one. For some reason, I assumed that it had pretty close release to the Sword trilogy, which this is a prequel to. But actually, after the Sword trilogy, the Heritage series came out, which was 4 books, and then this one. So if I wanted to do the whole series in release order, which of course I wanted to do that, I would have read those first. But I mean, not too big a deal. That's 4 books. It's gonna be crazy. But I think it has the list in here, and I was like, oh yeah. I don't know. I mean, granted, I don't think this is in order, like release order. No, it's not. But still, anyway. So it's been a while since I read it, and I'm trying to remember. The interesting thing about this book is that it's divided into parts. Like at the very start of the book, it'll say this: the fall of Paranor, and the next like 6, 7, 8 chapters. I don't know how much it is. I don't know if it's evenly divided or about the fall of Paranor. I believe it's the fall of Paranor, the search for the Black Elf Stone, the forging of the sword, and it's the battle of something. It's the field that the final battle takes place on. The Battle of the Wren, right? Okay, that was it. I just looked it up on my notes. Yeah, this was a good one. I knew I was gonna like this one because I still remember a lot about it, and I did like it the first time that I read it. But synopsis is this one follows Bremen, Alanon's father, and Alanon was the main druid for the Sword trilogy. This is many years before, because in the Sword of Shannara, the thing they're dealing with is the return of the Warlock Lord and the Third War of the Races. This is essentially what happened before us. Like, well, the Warlock Lord's back. Well, how's he back? Why did he leave the first time or the second time? Because this is covering the Second War of the Races. The first has already happened, and Brona, or the Warlock Lord, should be dead already, but he's back, and it's like, how? They even mentioned the book, the Ildach. Early in the book, it gets mentioned as being something that Bremen sees, but he doesn't do anything about because he can't in the current state that he's in. But I just think that's amusing because I don't believe the Ildach was mentioned at all in Sword. It was in Wish Song because it was the main focus that they needed to destroy in Wish Song, because it was like left over from the events of Sword, because Alanon was going to go into the mountain after the Warlock Lord had been defeated by Shay to retrieve the book and destroy it, because it's a bad thing, but it was taken by other people. Granted, it doesn't do much in this book. It's mentioned like once, just so you know that it's there. So the book follows, of course, Bremen and his buddy Kinson Ravenlock, who have been out in the world searching for the clues and hints and evidence that Brona is back and that the Warlock Lord is going to invade the rest of the Four Lands. Bremen, of course, druid, who left the Order, or was kicked out of the Order, depends on who you ask. Because at this point, the druids have become very, complacent, and they don't believe in the study of magic anymore. It's just about the study of science. They think that it's dangerous and unnecessary. And it's just one of those really frustrating things that you hate in all kinds of media, when the character you're following has the information and they take it to the people who need to know it and they brush it off, which is what happens when Bremen goes back to Paranor and tries to tell the head druid and everyone that Brona's coming back, and they need to prepare for battle. They need to warn all the other races. They need to present a united front, and they just say, yeah, we don't believe you, and they send him on his way. And like, I don't know, days later, Brona invades and kills every single druid. So it's like on the one hand, it's kind of a bummer. Like, it's like, oh man, they got massacred. On the other hand, it's like, well, you didn't heed the warning, which is why it's called the Fall of Paranor. That's the first thing Brona does, because the druids were largely responsible for his defeat in the First War of the Races. So he literally it's like petty revenge, but also a good strategic move to go after Paranor first and take everyone out, which is what he does. Brona, that is. There's a bunch more characters that we meet. I think the cast gets a pretty decent size, not too much in this book, because it does just start with Kinson Ravenlock, which, if you remember, there was, I believe, Cheryl Ravenlock in Sword of Shannara, girl who was kidnapped, and that Menyon, right? Menyon? Yeah, Menyon rescues. But it's the other druids, three other druids join Bremen shortly, yeah, before everything is wiped out, which is Treffenwyd, an elf, Riska, a dwarf, and what was her name? It's been a month since I read this darn thing. Marith. Took me a while to find. Also, this book is really hard to read. It's like a small paperback, but it gets to a point where it's like just hard to separate it far enough to comfortably read the words in the middle. I don't know. I wish the book was bigger or something. Also, there's like a bunch of pages. I don't know if you can see it. It's like right here in this that looks discolored or like different. There's like 10 or so pages that just fall out. They're not attached to the spine, which is really annoying. But I mean, I just got this. It's not like it's old, and maybe the binding's not great. But Marith is the other one, and they're the ones who head off on the adventure. They go to the Valley of Shale, which is where Alanon regularly receives visions of Bremen in the trilogy. This time, Bremen receives Gallifile, the leader of the Druids. I believe the one who formed the First Order. And he receives a vision of that guy who tells him, or who shows him visions of other important things that he needs to do for this book, which include finding the Black Elf Stone and making the Sword of Shannara and stuff like that. And also the death of the Druids, and a vision of Alanon when he was a young boy. And the rest of the book is trying to do all those things and understand them, basically, from Bremen's perspective. Yeah, so I really enjoyed it. After that, I just finished wrapping up Fall of Paranor real quick. After that, because they see that vision of Paranor, or I think he says something about Gallifile implies something that the Druids are gone. They go back to Paranor and find that, yep, it's empty. But not before splitting up. So every other part of the book kind of follows different people as they do different things. Search for the Black Elf Stone follows Tay, who goes back to the elves, and Riska, who goes back to the dwarves to try to rally that army for the undoubtedly incoming battle. And Tay needs to go talk to the elves to try to get together a search for the Black Elf Stone. Yeah, I think it's funny. I knew that Treffenwyd was like my favorite of this group for this book, but I also like forgot how quickly, or like I guess how early in the book he dies technically, and it kind of actually makes me like him more, because in hindsight, it's kind of like his dying as early as he does is a notable thing that kind of affects the rest of the story, especially from a Gerald Shannara's perspective, the first king of Shannara, when we meet him and Preya Starl, and how much his death affects both of them. Yeah, I really did like Treffenwyd. And the cool thing about this book is since Treffenwyd and Riska are much younger than Bremen is, and even than Alanon was in the Sword trilogy, we get to see them do some really cool stuff with their magic to show that they're younger and more powerful and apt to draw on it. Whereas Bremen is obviously really old. Like, he has the skills and stuff, but he just doesn't have the stamina for it, as we see several times in the book. Since this is prior to Bremen dies after the events of this book. As in, he does the same thing that Alanon did at the end of Wish Song, which is he gets taken into the waters by a druid, and then he'll assume the role of that druid and become the guiding druid for the next person, in this case for Alanon, like he is in the trilogy, like Gallifile was for him. So, yeah. I thought it was interesting meeting some of these characters again, because it had been a while. So Like, I remember liking Tay Treffenwood, and rereading the book reminded me why I did. Bremen was cool having as a main. I really did like Kinson Ravenlock, even if he wasn't around that much. Him and Mareth didn't get to do a lot because Bremen was always sending them out on separate tasks. The most that they're around for is the forging of the swords, since that directly follows Bremen, Kinson, and Mareth as they go to this smithy town to make the sword. Well, they first go to where we just were. They go to the exact same place that Bryn and Roan ended up at in Wishsong, which is the in the Wolfstag. They go to or near the Wolfstag. They go to the old guy. Forgot his name, darn it. But like the old guy with the moor cat and the girl from Wishsong. They go to the exact same place and find another old dude who has the same name as the old dude, and they get his help to basically figure out how to forge a sword. Because the science of alloys and stuff like that was lost to most people except for him. I also think, like, just that whole thing about the forging of the sword, it reminded me of it's a book that comes out later because this one's older, but one of my favorite parts of Aragon, I don't know if anyone's read the Aragon series, comes from, I want to say, the third book, which is funny because my least favorite parts of that series came from the third book, which is also why I never finished it. I think there was one more book after Brisingar, and I had no interest in reading it. Like, I just did not like the way the third one ended. I'm not a fan. But I believe it's the third book. It's either the third book or the second book where the main character forges a sword. And it's a pretty long process that they go through. And I just thought it was really cool. So the forging of the sword of Shannara for this book isn't really done. It's done more from an outsider's perspective. So you don't actually get to see what's happening. You just get to hear from how other people would recall that night of the forge being used. And what was the guy's name? Skrell, I think it was, the blacksmith they ended up using. Which, that was a great thing. I don't know if this has ever happened to you when you're reading something or listening to something and you can reach the conclusion as the conclusion is reached. Urpox Skrell, that's the name of the blacksmith I just remembered. So he's warned several times by Bremen that being this close to the magic and being involved with the forging of the sword will change him in some way or another. And to be fair, he retired from smithing for his own reasons. And he's only doing it this one time because Bremen kind of forced him to understand the whole everything of what's going on. That if they don't get this sword, the entire world is doomed because there's no one who can stop the Warlock Lord. After the sword is forged, Skrell takes his family and they leave immediately. He closes down his forge. He never uses it again. He vanishes, and then there's a bunch of like anecdotes about people thinking that they found him, but they're not sure where he is. With the last one mentioning that he's been found selling like fine jewelry and stuff that I guess he made in like some random town somewhere in the Southland, I think. Just somewhere not here, maybe in the Borderlands. And it was as the author was saying, or as the narrator was saying, but by that time he was no longer going by the name Skrell, or Urpox Skrell. And I was like, oh, and then at the same time that the author said it, I was like, it's because he went by Creel. And I was like, it was a really cool, I'd completely forgotten about that until just as it was happening. That this also features a origin for the Creel family. Granted, of all of that family, the only member we know is Panemon Creel, the rogue that Shay meets in Sword, along with Keltset, and they're the ones who help get him to the Northland and Brona's domain and find the sword at the end of that book. It was just a really neat detail. I was really happy to hear it. When it comes to combat, unlike Wishsong, which did not have like any war or battle scenes except for the one in the dwarf fortress, the siege that the gnomes were doing, that ends with the Kraken destroying everything. This one has quite a few because we follow the Riska when he joins up with the dwarves. We follow the dwarves delaying battle, kind of like the one against the demons in Elfstones. where they just try to hold up and do as much damage to the Northland army as they can while retreating further and further east. And then we have the final battle with the dwarves in the west. I mean, the elves in the west against the Northland army. And once again, they're just such good, interesting, and dynamic battles, especially the one with the elves at the end of the book. And of course, because it's the last series of fights before victory is achieved, that is just like, they're really, really cool. And yeah, I guess it makes sense that since Al-Anon has always been the lone druid, you should have assumed going into this book that all the other ones were going to die. All the other named ones. Which, yeah, Tay-Trefenwyd dies early retrieving the Black Elf Stone. Riska dies like right at the end of the book. It's not exactly described how he died, just assume that he died in the final battle. It's not until after the battle's over that they realize he's dead. Bremen obviously goes to rest in the lake. Mareth, the druid apprentice, actually decides not to be a druid anymore, following the events of the war and everything. Which leaves Al-Anon on his own. Yeah, I think Mareth was also cool. Like, she has innate magic, as they call it, which instead of learning how to use magic or how to wield it, which everyone else did, she just has it. It's super powerful, but it's out of control, and she doesn't know how to control it, which is why she went to Paranor to try to learn from them, specifically from Bremen. And the assumption is that she was born of a human woman and a demon, which is why she has that magic. I believe that is supposed to be fact, but I don't think we're ever supposed to actually believe we meet the demon that was responsible. We meet a skull bearer that pretends to be her father, that they get into a big fight, but I don't know if that was supposed to be it, or if it was just playing that role to try to confuse her. But I think one cool thing about it is that in helping Mareth try to control her magic, Bremen crafts a wooden staff lighted with runes that she can use to direct her fire through, which is exactly how the Knights of the Word fight in The Word and the Void. They have staffs with runes that shoot fire. So I was like, is that what it's supposed to be? Like, I think it is. Like, I think it's directly supposed to be one of their staffs that he, like, kind of recreated to help her. And it does help her. It's just that after everything and literally sitting there on the battlefield where everyone around her is dead or dying, she decides to stay with Kinson, who they have gradually fallen in love throughout the book, versus going back with Bremen and continue to be a druid, which is something that he admits in the end, which he kind of figured might happen, I think. But it's very clear from the moment he meets Al-Anon that there's something special about him and that Al-Anon would eventually be his successor. I didn't think it was neat how Al-Anon even got a few moments during the big final battle with the elves that to use his druid magic, which is really neat. His early druid magic, which is not as powerful as what he has in the other trilogy, but obviously he just started. Trying to remember any of the characters. Obviously, Gerald Shannara, the king of the elves, the first king of Shannara, as the book is named after. The one who wields its sword and tries to use it to defeat the Warlock Lord, fails. I really liked him. His friendship with Tay-Trefenwyd and his relationship with Preya Starl are really good. And with the Lowcat, I forgot the Lowcat's name. But it's sad that he fails in the end, because you do like him, but you know that he has to fail because Shay needs to defeat the Warlock Lord for real in the trilogy. But it's understandable. It's funny because it directly relates to how Al-Anon treats the truth about the Sword of Shannara with Shay at the end of that book, where he doesn't tell Shay what the sword's power is. Shay discovers that on his own and kind of freaks out because he's like, wait, I gotta fight this thing using truth? That doesn't make any sense. It's not gonna work. With Bremen, he directly told Gerald everything about the sword, about its power of truth and how he was supposed to use it to kill the Warlock Lord. And it's something that he has to repeat time after time after time, because Gerald refuses to accept that that's it. Because he's so much more physical about it. Like, he's a great warrior. So he's like, why can't this sword shoot fire or do some blatantly, obviously magical things to help me fight. Instead, truth. He tries to use it against a random demon at the end of a battle, and Bremen has to tell him that that demon isn't lying to itself. Like, it's not wrapped in deceit or anything like that. Truth's not gonna do anything with it. The sword only exists to defeat the Warlock Lord. And it's a thing that he gets really annoyed with, as you can tell, and it's something that Gerald has a hard time accepting. And even though he kind of seems to be winning against the Warlock Lord in the end, he gets manipulated by something that he says and by the belief that Preastara, who at that time had become his wife, is in danger, and it kind of makes him lash out in anger. And so using the sword as a sword instead of as the magical talisman that it is what it does still kind of force Brona to fade away, and it's why it takes so long for him to rebuild his power for sword, but it doesn't kill him for good, even though it's supposed to. Because he's screwed up. It's unfortunate. And of course, a lot of it is, as you read the book, you can see that he's hung up on Tay Treffenwood's death. And it really affects him. If Tay Treffenwood had not died in the search for the Black Elf Stone, or in retrieving it, because he actually did find it, then this story definitely would have ended differently. But yeah, I do wonder about the Black Elf Stone. Like, I don't remember what it is that thing does in the future. Because I know we find it here, and Tay uses it once, and then for the rest of the book, it's gone. Just in hiding somewhere until I think Bremen takes it at the end of the book. I know there's a book way later. It's like one of the last ones in the series called The Black Elf Stone. So it's like, oh. I don't know if it comes up again anytime before that, though. I think it might have to, because it is important. I think in like the Genesis or those books, or Legends, those early books, maybe it's mentioned or it's present in them. But we'll see what happens. So yeah, I don't think I got much else to say, because like it's very simple with the whole thing. Like, the Fall of Paranor was Fall of Paranor. The search for the Black Elf Stone follows Tay Treffenwood and Gerald Shannara to get the Black Elf Stone. Forging of the sword, that's Kinson, Mareth, and Bremen trying to learn about how to make the sword, how to learn the science for it, then going to find the smith to make it. And then the Battle of the Ren is the final battles of the elves against the Warlock Lord and his armies, and ends with his defeat. I think it's cool how the final chapter opens by jumping forward in time to establish what happens to all the characters afterwards. And Kinson and Mareth obviously get married, and I believe they found the city of Tircis, I think is the one that they find. I think it's Tircis, because Varfleet was already here and it was destroyed. And that one dwarf city, which I forgot the name of, which is where Mareth and Kinson fight the Skullbearer, was also destroyed. So I'm pretty sure it's Tircis that they create. That they found, I guess the word is. I find it here because it's at the start of the final chapter, I believe. Kern. Tircis already existed. I believe that's actually where Kinson came from. Kern is the city that they found in the Borderlands. Okay. And then they make a brief mention to Shirl, like in not directly a name, but that there would be one of their children involved in the whole Sword of Shannara thing, which was her. Really like this book, really good one. It's really good. I think I want to say it was shorter than the others, but it's hard to tell because of how small the font is. Like, the book is small, but the font is small, so there's a lot in here. Good one though. So yeah, that's another Fourlands report done. Like, I think about. When it comes to this book series specifically, the only ones I have are the other two Word in the Void books, which I think I'll go into, even though once again that's also out of order, just because they're the only other ones that I have. Running with the Demon and Knight of the Word, and then I want to pick up Angel Fire East at some point. And then after that, maybe I'll go into looking for the Heritage series, which is, I think, what is it? Scions, Elf Queen, Talisman, and Druid. Oh yeah, so I'm looking forward to. Yeah, the Heritage Shannara is the introduction to Walker Bow. I can't wait to meet him again. So anyway, thanks everyone so much for watching, and until next time, see you then. Hasta.